Hi, and welcome to Chief for Yourself. We are happy to have you with us wherever you are in the world. Our purpose on this show is to foster the good chi and to support you in the living of a genuine life. Our guest today is a best-selling author, motivational humorist, keynote speaker, workshop leader, therapeutic humor expert, and he is the world's only jollytologist. We'll get to that in just a moment. Alan Klein has written a number of books, including The Art of Living Joyfully, How to Be Happier Every Day of the Year. His intention is to help people to laugh more, love more, and live more. We're happy to welcome Alan Klein to Chief for Yourself. Thanks for being with us today, Alan. Appreciate it.
Great, and I love that. Laugh more. What did you say? Laugh more, live more,
and love more.
And love more.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
I love it.
And I think with humor we can do all of those. I think that's all. It's all good, as they say. Let's talk about the word jollytologist. I know you are the world's only jollytologist. You coined the term. What does a jollytologist do? What's the definition?
Well, I came up with that, John, because I've studied, I actually have a master's degree in therapeutic humor, and the Greek word for laughter is gelos, G-E-L-O-S. So for a while I was calling myself a gelotologist, and people thought I made that wiggly dessert. So I changed it to jollytologist, and people kind of get a sense of at least a little bit of sense of what I do, which is basically show people how to use and find humor in their trials, their tribulations, and their kind of not-so-funny stuff.
Speaking of not-so-funny stuff, your life took quite a humorous turn, actually after a very sad event in your life, the death of your wife. Talk about that period and how both of you found humor at that time.
Right. Well, it was a very difficult time, as you can imagine. We moved from New York to San Francisco. My wife was from San Francisco. We always wanted the Victorian house. We got the Victorian house we wanted. And in a short time after that, we found out she had a rare liver disease, primary biliary cirrhosis. And there was no cure at the time. There were no liver transplants at the time. And she did pass away 3 years later. And needless to say, John, that was a very difficult time. But Ellen always had a great sense of humor and continued to use it even during those 3 years. Give you one example. She was in the hospital with a copy of Playgirl magazine with a male nude centerfold. And she said, Alan, hey, I really like this picture this month. Can you put it on the wall over here by the bed? And I said, Ellen, this is a hospital. There's no escape for that. She said, well, maybe you're right. She said, why don't you get a leaf from a plant and cover up that part? And I did that, and things were fine for the first day, fine for the second day. But by the third day, the leaves started shriveling up and revealing more of what we were trying to conceal.
Yes.
And we would just start to laugh. And we would come home from the hospital, and yes, it was a difficult time, but when we thought about that incident, we would start to laugh. And I realized it wasn't a lot of laughter. It was, 5 or 10 seconds. But it helped us rise above the situation, gave us a reprieve, gave us a perspective that humor always gives in any situation. And so when I saw that power that humor could give us, even just a little bit in that difficult time, it's when I went back to school to learn more about therapeutic humor.
There's a great line attributed to Buddy Rich, supposedly said when he was taken to the hospital with a heart attack and was being treated in the emergency room, and the nurses were asking him, Mr. Rich, they were trying to get his drug situation straightened out, and they said, Mr. Rich, is there anything you can't take? And he said, yeah, country music. I said, I mean, sadly enough, Buddy Rich died, but that's a great time and great timing for a wonderful piece of humor. I love that line. It's just great.
Yeah.
The Art of Living Joyfully is loaded with quotes and affirmations from a range of sources. Is there any particular way you'd like to see the reader use the book?
Well, I've gotten, it's a book of 500 quotations, so it's not the kind of book where you sit down and read you know, one after the other.
Mm-hmm.
But they are in different categories. So if you're looking for category of love, like Valentine's Day, you might find it there. If you're looking for some spiritual uplifting, you might find a quote under the spirituality section or the pet section if you're looking for that. But what people tell me, you know, they just, and I'm going to do that right now, they just open the book and they read one quote, and that's like their, kind of like their mantra, their like guide for the day. So here, I'm just reading this one I opened it up to page 21 under the section of beauty by Jean Kerr, and it says, I'm tired of all the nonsense about beauty being only skin deep. That's deep enough. What do you want, an adorable pancreas? Now, that happened to be a funny quote. Sometimes they're more inspirational, or motivational, but you know, you can just read a quote a day or put it in your email for the day with credit, of course, to the book, I hope, or put it, you know, on Facebook, or send it to some woman said, you know, she has a daughter in prison and the daughter is not doing well. And she says, every day I send my daughter a quote from one of your books and it lifts me up and it lifts my daughter up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, words are so incredibly powerful. You know, I'm the author of The Healing Power of Humor, which was my first book. And I had so many quotes left over that I put it into a quotation book, and that did so well they asked me to do another and another, and I've now done 7 or 8 quotation books. And I kept thinking, Alan, why are you doing these books? You're not really writing these, you're kind of assembling them, but somehow people maybe are more attuned, some people, to not sitting down and reading a whole book, but just opening it and finding a quote that really speaks to them. Mm-hmm. And I got a letter from a woman who said when she was a teenager, she was violently raped twice. She said, I'm now in my 70s. She said, I have never told anyone about this for 55 years. Can you imagine that, John? Oh. 55 years carrying this around. Wow. She said, I opened one of your quotation books and found a quote that really called out to me. She said, I put it all around my house, and I've really taken back my power, and I'm living fully again after 55 years. Mm-hmm. And I'll read the quote. It's a Dale Carnegie quote, and it says, when we hate our enemies, we're giving them power over us our sleep, our appetites, our blood pressure, our health, and our happiness. Our enemies would dance with joy if only they knew how they were worrying us and getting even with us. Our hate is not hurting them at all, but our hate is turning our days and nights into a hellish turmoil.
There's a forgiveness element there, and that's a very powerful energy to forgive.
Right. Oh, I think people talk about the book, The Art of Living Joyfully. I think people would live more joyfully if they can forgive, because how many people carry around all of this upset, all of this hate, all of this heavy, like a burden on their shoulders by not forgiving other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, if we believe our nightly newscasts, we're going through some very rough times. People are having their personal challenges too, financial setbacks, workplace dissatisfactions and such. Where do we find humor today with all of these things going on?
Well, I step before humor. I think before we find the humor, we've got to change our attitude. And in my workshops, I go through the letters L-A-U-G-H, and A is attitude. Because we have a choice. I think the biggest thing in this world is to realize that we have the choice in any situation. So, it's our attitude. Okay, you're fired from your job, which I was when I was younger. And yes, I was upset. But then I started to look at some of the opportunities. What what doors have opened? Helen Keller said, speaking about quotations, when one door closes, another opens. But we look so long at the closed door that we forget the open one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, what are the opportunities? Okay, you lost your job. Hopefully it's not permanent. Maybe you could move on to a better job. Maybe you can do something you've always wanted to do but never had time. Maybe your spouse could work and you can spend more time with the kids. I mean, what I'm saying is change your focus, change your attitude. And I think once you start to do that, then you're not so stressed out and you may find the humor there. And you may be more open to the humor that happens all around us. Because I believe that humor is all around us, but when we get stressed out, we don't see it.
No.
Give you one example of humor I found just a little while ago. I was in a laundromat, and there was a sign on the wall, and it said, "When the machine stops, remove all your clothing." It's not the way they meant it, okay?
No.
But there is humor all around us. So the thing is to see things differently, to change your attitude, and then I think it's easier to find the humor that is there.
Yeah, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So you can make change in the world. One person can make a difference.
Exactly.
I guess, yeah.
Exactly.
I grew up watching Ed Sullivan and other variety shows. I remember hearing comics and other funny people tell their life stories, and they were stories that were anything but funny. What was it like in your home growing up?
Well, first of all, let me say it's interesting you mentioned Ed Sullivan, because I used to be a scenic designer, and I worked on Ed Sullivan's show. I was an apprentice scenic designer on that show, and yes, we had all those stand-up comedians, and they're poking fun of everyday situations, and the reason, we could be in the same situation and we don't laugh about it, but when they poke fun at it, we laughed at it, because they showed us how absurd it is, and that's one thing about humor. If you can exaggerate, or they exaggerated the situation. If you can take any situation, exaggerate it, you'll probably find the absurdity and start to laugh. So you asked about me growing up in my home. My father was extremely serious. To him, the glass was always half full. Is that correct? Yeah, half full. And he would always look at the negative thing. My mother, on the other hand, was always really positive and very funny. In fact, she used to say that her and her sister, they'd kid around all the time. Her and her sister was in burlesque once, and their names were Irene and Urine. And they were called the Pea Sisters.
Oh,
and she would joke like that all the time, or just change her attitude and things. I remember she was when she was older, she was in a condo, and my dad had died, and she was moving to assisted living, and she called up and she said, I was taking things out of the closet, I put it on this TV tray, and it collapsed on the floor, and half the dishes broke. And I said, "Oh, Ma, that's terrible." She said, No, now I have less to pack.
Wow.
So, she's always looked at stuff that way.
Yeah. You also worked for a time in children's television, including Captain Kangaroo Show. Were there funny moments, any humor fodder taken away from that show?
Well, I think, I never thought, when I look back in my life, I never thought, like, all these pieces fit. How does, like, Captain Kangaroo fit into my current professional speaking career or my writing career? And then I realized I use a lot of props in my programs to illustrate things I'm talking about. I mean, I have an audience, say, of 500 people. We all of them think about a stress they're having, and they blow it into a balloon, and then they release the balloon, and it's quite amazing what happens. They release that stress in the balloon. But what I realized, John, is that, I've taken some of that playful things that children would do, and I've kind of incorporated not only in my workshops, but also in my life. I'm in my office right now, and I'm looking around, and every shelf has some toys.
Oh,
I know this is crazy.
yeah,
A grown man with toys. But there's some Teletubbies. There's a Ken doll that somebody gave me for some reason. There's Jars of Bubbles. There's a McDonald's clown. What is it? Clown, whatever that's called. It's a little wind-up toy. There's a stuffed little bee. There's a mask. There's some people with clown noses on their face. There's a picture, autographed picture of Woody Allen. So I just surround myself with fun things.
well, that's refreshing actually, because you could be playing with some much more dangerous toys, as we all know.
Yeah, well, like I don't think kids should be having gun toys or things like that. But that's a whole other issue, I guess.
Yeah, I've always believed that kids have so much to teach us. What can kids teach us or show us about humor?
Oh, not only about humor, but like about living, about joy. I mean, go to a playground and just watch the energy and the wonderful way kids react to stuff. And they don't need a lot to one, keep them occupied. And also, we can learn a lot about relieving our stress. I remember I was at the airport once. My flight was canceled. You know, the next flight was 3 hours later. I was watching two kids who also with their parents on the same flight. The parents were like, you know, I could overhear them, and they were upset and they were annoyed. And I watched these two kids, and they sat down, they took out some little toy they had, and they were using the toy on the design on the carpet, like the design was a roadway and the toy was going down the roadway. And I thought, look, it's the same exact situation. And look at how the parents were reacting and how the kids were reacting. And so we could learn a lot from them. We could also learn about tolerance and love. I remember when I was writing The Healing Power of Humor, my daughter was a teenager, and every 10 minutes she would knock on my door and come in my office and tell me something I didn't want to hear. You know, I had a deadline to write this book. And finally I closed the door and I put a sign on the door that said, "Do not disturb unless it's an emergency." I mean, I became real serious, right? I'm writing this book on humor, and I became real serious. And so 10 minutes later, there's a knock on the door, and I yelled, "Yes, Sarah, what do you want? Is it an emergency?" She said, "Yes, it's an emergency." And so I opened the door. "What's the emergency?" She said, "I have to tell you I love you."
Oh, wow. That's certainly put in perspective.
This is what kids teach us, you know? So, yeah, kids are great for humor, for anything in life. I think kids are great.
Stress, that's a common health problem. Lots of stress in the workplace, for instance. Are there some things we can do on the job, let's say, that would sort of act as a safety valve in a place that's really not a lot of fun?
How many hours do we have, John? I could do my whole seminar. Because I'll tell you, I do a lot of workshops in hospice for hospice staff. And, you know, you would think these people are really burnt out, and sometimes they are. They're working with people who are dying and their families. And yet these are my favorite audience because they're so close to death. They realize how important life is and to enjoy every single moment. And so if you're at work, and maybe not hospice, if you're at other work, I mean, just put it all in perspective. How important is that thing you're dealing with at this moment, or that the boss is, you know, carrying on, or customers yelling at you? How important is that? And I'm writing another book that's called "You Can't Ruin My Day." And how often we give our power away to let other people ruin our day. So I think, you know, things aren't going well at work. Just think of that, you know, about taking back your power, of enjoying the moment in spite of what's happening. And studies have shown that workers who are enjoying their job, that can laugh a little throughout the day, have less absenteeism, enjoy their work more, and so they're more productive, and just better workers. So even studies show that it's hard to get sometimes at work. You know, everything is bottom line and making more money, and these days it may, cutbacks and stuff. But the other thing is to be grateful. You have a job. You know, as bad as you think your job is, think of all the people that don't have jobs. Mm-hmm. So again, attitudes, focus on the positive, because it's easier than, if you're focusing on the negative, it's harder to find the humor.
Yeah. We often hear the people who push your buttons are really your best teachers. How do you explain that to the person who spends 8 hours a day in an office environment that's not a whole lot of laughs?
Well, I think we go along, and when we go along in life and things are going well, we don't learn much. I don't know. We're built that way. We don't learn much. And so it's those negative things. I think my wife's death, not that I wanted her to die, certainly it was untimely at 34 for her to die. Mm-hmm. But look what came out of that. I mean, now my books are over 500,000 in print, 9 different languages. Because of her dying, it's changed so many other people's lives through my work and my writing because of that one incident. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but we can see at the moment we're upset or irritated or angry or disappointed, we can see down the future. So we don't know why this is happening to us right at that moment.
Right.
But I do believe there's a bigger picture, and that there is perhaps a reason why it's happening. And if we're open to it, we might be able to see why, down the road, what all that meant years ago. And, people often say, well, that was not so terrible, when they look back, or I learned a lot from that. Because I think the adversity teaches us about life, and if we can get through it, we become stronger.
Is there anything or anyone that cannot be a source of humor, just someplace that you just won't go with your humor?
Well, I attribute it to Carol Burnett, but it's the saying was, and we're not sure she said it, but the saying is that humor is tragedy plus time. So often it takes a while, when tragedy or loss or something major happens, it takes a while. So if you remember 9/11, the late night comedians went off the air, New Yorkers stopped publishing cartoons. Yeah. But once we knew who our enemy was, then we could poke fun at it because we then get the upper hand on it. Mm-hmm. Think about, the Producers, the show about Hitler and Nazi Germany. And, for years no one could joke about that. And then Mel Brooks comes along and writes the show about it, the movie, and then the musical. And some people think, well, not enough time had passed, but for most people, okay, now we can laugh at that. Mm-hmm. And the point about when you can laugh at something, you get the upper hand, because it's like you're on top of the situation. You know that's not so great, but you can still laugh about it. It gives you power over sometimes a powerless situation. So in my mind, it's not that you can't laugh at stuff or some things. It's whether it's too soon or not. And I kind of sometimes think about AT&T. Is it appropriate? Is it tasteful? And is it timely? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not tasteful, and sometimes it's not timely or not appropriate. Someone says, oh, I just came from the doctor and he said I have cancer. May not be time to joke about it. Mm-hmm. But maybe in 2 weeks when they call you up and tell you a funny joke about cancer, maybe that's the time you can joke with them. Mm-hmm. So it's really very situational, when it's appropriate, when it's not, who you're joking with or at, or it really depends on the situation.
Yeah, it's a judgment call, and I guess you get a feel for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I teach humor, and I even don't time it right. I remember a number of years ago, and this is, again, a great lesson for me. We talk about lessons in adversity. A good friend of mine had just broken up in a long-time relationship, and I thought, I'm going to try to cheer him up, and I was lighthearted about it and maybe joking a little about it, and he got very upset. And, he was hurt. How could you, I'm hurting. How could you laugh about this? And so, we got to listen. We got to be attuned. We got to understand the situation before we can try to lighten it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anything new in the works for you? I know you mentioned a new book. Tell us about that.
Oh dear. Well, I can't remember. I can't remember which is the new book. There's one coming out for Mother's Day. Mom's the Word. There's another one coming out, I think, the end of the year. Again, they're quotation books. Always Look on the Bright Side of Life is the name of that one. And then there's one after that that'll come out next year that the name escapes me. Right now I'm also speaking all over the country. San Diego, Michigan, Chicago coming up. Like that. Yeah. Just trying to lighten up the world best I can.
One last question, we'll let you go here. With all of your life experience in dealing with your own challenges, what one thought would you like us to take away with us as we deal with our own difficult times?
Well, I think for me, we are prone to look at the negative. So this scientific studies back from the caveman when everything was dangerous to, we're always looking for danger. So I think the real key is to look for the positive. And you need those reminders around. And that's what I am, a reminder to people to lighten up. But I think one reminder people could have is a feather, and just keep that feather around. I used to keep it on the dashboard of my car, and whenever I was in traffic, I would look at the feather and remember to lighten up. So keep a reminder around, whether it's a red clown nose or feather, a photo of your kids, something to remind you to lighten up.
Give us your website, too.
Oh, website, www.allenklein.com. You have to spell it right. ALLENKLEIN.com. www.allenklein.com. My books are there, articles are there. It's all there.
Right. Alan Klein, The Art of Living Joyfully, How to Be Happier Every Day of the Year. Alan, thanks so much for being with us today. I appreciate it, and I do hope you'll come back again. Obviously, you've got lots of things going on, and we'd like to hear from you once more.
Great. I'd love to do a return visit.
All right, Alan, thanks so much, and have a great day. We'll talk to you again.
Thanks, John.
All right, Alan, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, and we will link to Alan's website at achieve4yourself.com. You'll be able to find out more. You'll be able to hear this interview, of course, as you usually can, and you'll get more information too. So thank you for being with us today. Be well, and I will talk to you soon.